So, I've got something super interesting for today's Faith Fuel Freedom, and um, I think it's gonna really blow your mind, Adrian. You know how people are always asking about, like, the big questions in life?
Oh man, those are absolutely my favorite kind of conversations. What's on your mind?
Well, I've been thinking a lot about, one of the most fundamental questions that people struggle with. Like, how do we actually know God is real? Because, and I know you've thought about this a lot.
Oh wow, yes, yes. This is this is such an incredible topic and you know what? It's actually something I'm really passionate about because there's so many different ways to approach this question.
That's exactly why I wanted to dive into this with you today. Um, I feel like you've got such amazing insights on this, and, well, I know our listeners are probably wrestling with this question too.
You're absolutely right. And and I think what makes this so fascinating is that there's not just one simple answer, right? It's like it's this beautiful combination of personal experience, scientific evidence, and just this deep spiritual understanding that all comes together.
So, Adrian, I'm really curious about your personal journey with this. Um, how did you first, like, come to believe that God was real?
Oh man, that's such a powerful question and it really takes me back. I think for me, it wasn't like this one big moment, right? It was more like this series of small moments that just kept building and building.
Could you share some of those moments with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I remember this one time I was going through probably the hardest period of my life. My dad was really sick and I felt completely lost. But then something incredible happened. I started feeling this presence, right? This incredible sense of peace that just didn't make any logical sense given what was happening.
How did you know that wasn't just, like, your mind trying to cope with everything?
That's that's actually such a great question. And I've thought about this a lot, right? The thing is, these experiences kept happening and they weren't just emotional responses. Like there were times when I'd pray about something really specific. And the way things would unfold, it was just too precise to be coincidence, you know what I mean?
Could you maybe give us an example of that?
Oh yeah, definitely. So there was this time when I was really struggling with a major life decision, right? And and I remember praying for guidance, just really specific guidance. The next day, I kid you not, three different people, three completely unconnected people. They all gave me the exact same advice, like using almost the same words. That's the kind of thing that just makes you stop and think, right?
And that changed things for you?
Oh, totally. Totally. Because you see, it's not just about these big dramatic moments. It's about this ongoing relationship that just keeps growing deeper. Like the more I lean into it, the more real it becomes, you know? And and the beautiful thing is everyone's journey is different. But but these personal experiences, they become like your own personal evidence, if that makes sense.
Adrian, I'm really fascinated by what you've shared about your personal experiences, but I've also heard there are, more logical arguments for God's existence. Could you maybe tell us about those?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And this is actually something that really excites me because, you know, faith isn't just about feelings. It's also grounded in some really fascinating logical arguments, right? Like, let me tell you about what we call the cosmological argument.
What's that about?
So basically it goes like this. Everything that exists, right, has to have a cause. And when we look at the universe, we can trace everything back and you know what I mean? But here's the thing. We can't just have an infinite chain of causes going backwards forever, right? There has to be what we call a first cause, something that started it all.
And that would be God?
Exactly. Because you see, this first cause would need to be like outside of time and space, right? And it would need to be powerful enough to create everything we see. And when you really think about it, that lines up perfectly with what we understand about God.
Could you tell us more about other scientific evidence?
Oh man, let me tell you about something that just blows my mind every time I think about it. It's called the fine-tuning argument. So, so the universe has these fundamental constants, right? Things like gravity and the strength of atomic forces. And here's the crazy thing. If any of these constants were even slightly different, like even by a tiny fraction, life wouldn't be possible at all.
Really? Like, how different?
We're talking about changes so small that it's hard to even comprehend, right? Like if gravity were just a tiny bit stronger or weaker, stars couldn't form properly. And without stars, we wouldn't have the elements needed for life. It's like it's like someone fine-tuned all these dials to exactly the right settings. You know what I mean?
That does sound pretty incredible.
And that's not even all. Like when we look at the mathematical principles underlying the universe, they're just they're just beautiful. And the deeper scientists dig, the more order and complexity they find. It's like it's like discovering the fingerprints of an intelligent designer everywhere we look, right? The odds against all this happening by chance are they're just astronomical.
You know, speaking of evidence, I've always wondered about how different cultures throughout history have viewed God. Like, isn't it fascinating that so many civilizations came to similar conclusions?
Oh my goodness. Yes, yes. And this is actually one of the most compelling pieces of evidence we have. You know what I mean? Because like when you look across human history, right? Virtually every civilization has independently developed some concept of a higher power.
Could you tell us more about some specific examples?
So let me paint this picture for you. From the ancient Egyptians to the Greeks, from indigenous peoples in the Americas to ancient Chinese civilizations, they all somehow reached this conclusion that there's something greater than us. And what's really fascinating is the common threads you find, right?
What kind of common threads do you mean?
Well, like so many cultures share these basic ideas about a divine creator, right? And they often describe similar attributes, like this being is typically seen as all-powerful, eternal, and the source of moral law. Isn't that just mind-blowing?
But couldn't that just be like a coincidence?
See, that's what's so interesting, because these beliefs emerged independently across continents and in civilizations that had no contact with each other, right? And here's something really fascinating. Even as societies have become more advanced and scientific, this basic intuition about a higher power hasn't gone away. It's like there's something written into human consciousness. You know what I mean?
What about ancient texts and artifacts? Do they tell us anything?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is where it gets really exciting because we have these incredible historical records. Like take the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? Or or the countless ancient temples and religious artifacts that have been preserved. These aren't just stories. They are actual historical evidence of how deeply rooted spiritual beliefs are in human civilization. And and when you look at how these beliefs have shaped human history, influenced art, culture, philosophy, it's just it's just remarkable.
Moving into more recent times, I've been wondering about modern evidence for God's existence. Like, what are people experiencing today?
Oh, this is absolutely fascinating because we're actually living in an amazing time where science and faith are converging in really incredible ways, right? And what we're discovering through modern science is just mind-blowing.
Could you give us some specific examples?
So let me tell you about this. The more we learn about DNA, right, the more we're finding this incredibly complex, digital code that's just absolutely miraculous. And scientists are still struggling to explain how this level of complexity could have emerged by chance, you know what I mean?
What about other scientific discoveries?
Oh my goodness, yes. So when we look at quantum physics, right, it's showing us that the universe isn't this cold mechanical place we once thought. And there's this incredible fine-tuning in the cosmos that's just perfect for life to exist. Like if any of the fundamental constants were even slightly different, right, we wouldn't even be here.
That's actually really interesting. What about personal experiences people are having today?
So this is where it gets really personal and powerful because, people are still having these profound encounters with God today. And I'm talking about documented cases of healings that medical science can't explain, right? Or, or these incredible transformations in people's lives that just defy explanation.
How do we know these experiences are real, though?
Well, see, that's what's so compelling. Because, we're not just talking about one or two isolated cases. We're seeing patterns, right? And these experiences are happening to people from all walks of life. Doctors, scientists, skeptics who weren't even looking for God. And what's really fascinating is how consistent their testimonies are. You know what I mean?
Are there any other modern discoveries that point to God?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's this whole field of consciousness studies that's showing us that our minds can't just be reduced to brain chemistry. And and we're finding evidence of what you might call like design patterns throughout nature. Even in mathematics, right? We're discovering these beautiful, elegant equations that seem to point to some kind of intelligent designer behind it all.
Um, After hearing all of this evidence, I'm really curious, how can people actually start exploring this relationship with God for themselves?
Oh, this is actually my favorite part to talk about because developing a relationship with God is such a personal and beautiful journey, right? And there are so many practical ways to start experiencing his presence in your daily life.
Could you share some specific steps people could take?
So, so the first thing I always suggest is just starting with simple prayer, right? And I don't mean anything formal or complicated. Just just talking to God like you'd talk to a friend. Like share your thoughts, your feelings, your doubts even, because that's totally okay. You know what I mean?
What else can people do to deepen that connection?
Well, another really powerful practice is spending time in nature, right? Because when you're out there just taking in the beauty of creation, it's like God's artwork speaking directly to your heart. And and then there's meditation on scripture or inspirational readings that really resonate with you.
Um, are there any other practical steps?
Oh yes, absolutely. So one of the most transformative things is getting involved in a community of believers, right? Because when you're around others who are on this journey and you're sharing experiences and supporting each other, it's just it's just incredible how much that can deepen your faith.
What about people who might be feeling skeptical?
That's such a great question because skepticism is totally natural. And I always encourage people to keep a journal of their experiences, right? Document the moments when you feel something special happening, when prayers are answered, when you experience those little coincidences that feel like more than just chance, you know what I mean? And just be patient with yourself. Because this relationship, like any relationship, it grows over time.
You know, Adrian, after everything we've discussed today on Faith Fuel Freedom, I'm just, amazed at how many different ways there are to understand and experience God's presence.
Right. And that's exactly what makes this journey so incredible. Whether it's through personal experiences or the amazing design we see in the universe or even through historical evidence, there's just there's just so many paths that lead us to understanding God's reality.
What would you say to our listeners who might be just starting to explore their faith?
Oh, I would say just know that it's totally okay to take your time, you know? And don't feel pressured to have it all figured out right away. Your journey is uniquely yours, right? And and God meets each of us exactly where we are.
That's really beautiful and so encouraging.
Yeah. And you know what's really amazing? The fact that God is constantly revealing himself to us in new ways. And whether you're looking at the scientific evidence we discussed or experiencing those personal moments of connection, it all points to this incredible truth that God is real and he's actively present in our lives.
Any final thoughts for our listeners?
Just just remember that seeking God is probably the most meaningful journey you'll ever take, right? And whether you're starting with prayer or studying evidence or just opening your heart to new possibilities, you're taking steps towards something absolutely life-changing. So so just keep exploring, keep asking questions and trust that truth will reveal itself along the way.